Hi guys, nice to meet you. I'm Jen Ngozi with Netwerk.
Hi, I'm Cameron Bryant, and this is the Beverly Chat. Today, I am chatting with Jen Ngozi, the founder of Netwerk. Netwerk is a global women in leadership organization and movement on a mission to help everyday women worldwide build the community, confidence, and skills needed to become leaders. Let's get started.
Just another sunny day in Southern California. It's where the people came to play. Don't let them transform you.
What were the beginning days of Netwerk like, and what inspired you to start building your business?
Yeah, good question. So to be honest with you, the beginning days of Netwerk were quite simple, and to be completely honest, it wasn't Netwerk was never something that I like sat down and visualized what it will be all in one day. It came to me organically and through a series of events over time. So when we started, I was at a point in my career where I was actually working for a global consulting firm, and I just finished grad school. Like maybe I was like a year or two out of grad school, and I realized I was like, I need to start building my network now that I'm not on campus anymore. And I was working in consulting, and I was really focused on getting ahead. And I was one of those people who had a plan of how I was going to get promoted and be one of the few female leaders in the company. And reality hit me little by little. I started to realize that I'm not really moving up and I'm not progressing in my organization. And I was asking myself, well, why is that? And I realized a lot of what I wasn't doing. What I was doing, I'll start there. What I was doing, I was working really hard. I was creating all these plans, and I was focusing on things and aspects of my role that were very straightforward of this is what you need to do to get ahead. But I saw that I wasn't doing a lot of the important things that actually led to people being promoted. So my head was focused on the hard work element, the doing the job very well. Whereas there was an element of networking, self-promoting that I wasn't doing. And in reality, in my field specifically, that was really important, and that was holding me back. And I started reflecting. I'm like, well, when I go through school, when you grow up as women, like we're not really taught, and they don't really stress that in school, that yes, do a great job. That's a great starting point. But outside of that, you should also be promoting yourself. You should be getting out there. You should be telling people about the work you're doing. You should be building connections. Don't skip those happy hours. Those are actually the perfect opportunity for you to go and sit next to someone who could be making a decision about your career. So there was a lot of these things that I learned, over time. And I do also believe a lot had to do with my upbringing, being an immigrant to this country, having a family and parents in a community that consisted of immigrants. And one of the things that we are just taught in our DNA is to work hard. And those are really great skills. And I will definitely not say that those were not helpful, being a hard worker. But there's so much of that corporate underlying language and hidden politics and things that we aren't taught from day one to learn how to navigate. And I also think school can also do a better job at preaching and educating women, especially on these are the things that you need to do once you leave school to get yourself ahead, and is to get to the next level, self-promoting and networking. So I saw Netwerk as almost like a solution to what a problem I was going through. I wanted to get ahead. I wanted to build a network for myself. I was living in DC. I made a big move from California. That's where I'm from. And I didn't really know many people outside of school. And once school ended, it wasn't the same. So I saw Netwerk as a fun way to bring women together, because I also noticed that a lot of the events I was going to had this formality to it, and I really couldn't just like let my hair down and be free and speak in a way that I normally speak in. So I wanted something different. I felt like a lot of women would enjoy networking more if they had options of a way to network that wasn't so traditional. So growing up as a dancer, I thought back to, wow, dance made me feel so comfortable and confident as a kid, and it still does till this day. But I was missing that. And I realized that if non-dancers and everyday women can have that experience of networking, but also adding like a dance flair, it might give them more confidence. And that confidence could help with their careers. So that's really where the vision of Netwerk came from, was wanting to make women more confident and in going to work and asking for what we're worth and advocating for ourselves, but doing it in a way that's fun and that's not so, formal and scary. So that's a little bit about how we started. And like I said, when we started, it was an event. It was a single event that I was hosting. So I didn't really have this long-term vision. But over time, the concept started to gain traction. We started getting interest from dancers in other cities and then soon countries. So we licensed the idea so that dance instructors can now become certified licensed network instructors and host events in their cities. So that's how we've been able to really grow the mission, is through that program and training women online to host their own networking events. And then recently, as of last year, we also launched Network Society. So that was as a response to COVID-19. What this is a leadership development, career development program that helps support women by giving us access to opportunities like job opportunities and career development and training opportunities that oftentimes we don't get when we go through school. So that's where the concept came to me, was, for the first time, a lot of women are just kind of struggling in their careers, and COVID really shook everyone's life upside down. So I wanted us to advance beyond just a single event, which, by the way, a lot of events were not happening last year. So it forced us to get a little creative. What else can we do to support our community? So that's where the idea Network Society came from. So I think one thing you probably like to summarize, like my experiences, one thing literally led to another. But I think at the end of the day, a lot of it tied to a lot of personal experiences that I've had on my journey. That's really what shaped a lot of what we've done in Netwerk. I've always sat back and asked myself, well, what would have been helpful to me when I started my career? What would have been helpful to me at that stage in my life where I was struggling, I was out of work, and I couldn't find a job? And I started thinking through step by step of what things would have been good to me, and that's what we've slowly started to apply throughout Netwerk.
Awesome. I love that. I think one of the things that are often misinterpreted about entrepreneurs is that it's always like a straight line, what you're doing and everything. And I know from my experiences, the stuff that I do, it just comes out of like nowhere. It's very organic. And so hearing about your story is really interesting because it wasn't just like what we see now. There was like a process behind everything that you've done so far, which I think is really awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. While we're talking about the early days of Netwerk, I kind of wanted to talk about what it's like to be a solopreneur. And I think in the early stages, I think that it can be really, really scary to reach out and talk to people. And I just wanted to know if you had any advice to anyone who might be listening or anyone who might be watching on how to conquer that fear of talking about your passions and your job.
Yeah, that's a good one. And to be honest, I don't think that only happens in the early stages. I think that can happen at any stage. But with anything, I think the more you do it, the more comfortable you become doing it. And one thing I realized, it started with seeing the value of what you're doing, first of all, because it's hard to really sell people on what you're doing if you're not quite sold. So one thing I did is I really had to sit down and look at what I was doing and get beyond this as my hobby, because growing up, dance was always my hobby. So it was always something I did after the fact. So it was not really something that like it will come up in a conversation first. Once you start your career, your career becomes your focus. So, but once I started Netwerk, it was weird because for the first time, something that I've always been really passionate about became my career. So I had to like get this vision of it as dancing now no longer my hobby, it's now my mission. So, and I've tied it into other things. So starting to see the value, and this can make women more confident, this can help women get connected, help women with weight loss, help women get plugged in with the job opportunity. So once you really kind of sit down and stop thinking of it, well, this is just my project, or this is just my business, or this is just something I'm doing for fun, then it really creates more meaning to what you're doing. And when you really feel passionate about what you're doing, it's contagious. When you're talking to people, they get excited about your mission. And I'll give you a perfect example. I remember when I started to reach out for partnership and collaboration opportunities, because that's one thing that really a tip I would give is when you're starting anything, just know that there's somebody out there who's already done it and who's been there and who's building a platform that's probably similar to yours. The more you can collaborate and connect with other people, the better. And that was our strategy from day one. We teamed up when we started, we were in the Washington, D.C. area, and we partnered with a lot of women's organizations in the D.C. area that shared our mission. And we did co-events, and we went to their events and presented Netwerk. So that really helped us to build our audience very early. And when I approached them, it could have been very easy to think, oh, well, they're far ahead of me. They have been doing this women organization thing for years. Who am I to just approach them? But I was so excited about what I was doing. And when I told them, it was hard not to be too. You know, if you have someone who's super excited about what they're doing, even though you've never heard about it, you're like, okay, what's this? But it's all about seeing and being your complete brand ambassador, because before you start trying to get other people to see and join in on your movement and your mission, what you're doing, you have to be all in, because if you're not, it's really going to come off when you're starting to partner with people and reach out to people. But partnerships was like our first way that we started to grow. What we were doing is connecting with other people. And then same with dance instructors, with the program to train instructors. There's no way that could have came about if I didn't have that passion behind my brand first.
Awesome. I think one of the things that I at least have learned from school is that you have to be your own biggest advocate. And
Yes.
I feel like as a student, you know, you have to raise your hand and ask questions and complete work and, you know, really fight for your grades sometimes, not in terms of being combative towards teachers, but, you know, just in terms of asking for help. And I never looked at it from a business perspective because, you know, you do when you're creating something, you do have to advocate for it because, you know, you want it to be successful, which I think is really interesting. One of the old phrases that I like to talk to my mom about is if you want to know something about someone, you should invite them to a dinner party. And what I found really interesting about Netwerk is that you kind of did the same thing, but with dance. And if you want to find something out about someone, you invite them to a dance party. And I wanted to ask, what was it like combining dance and networking together? Where did your love for dance originate?
Yeah. Well, my love for dance originated when I think the first time I remember thinking like, wow, I really enjoy this was I was around 4, and I just remember my parents would play music at home, and like anything that I was doing would just go out the door. I would lose myself, and next to you know, hours would go by and I just started dancing as a kid. So I was very fortunate that my family was always very supportive of my dance career. But as I grew up, I realized that I wanted to take more of a traditional path. And I think that comes a lot from like society and just being a minority and someone from a background where it's stability is promoted, having a stable job, going to get a 9 to 5. So I do believe I fell victim to that, thinking that that was the best route. So that's really where the love of dance started. And how combining the two worked out was it was something I was very passionate about, dance, and then it was something that I know that needed to be done to get to the next level, which is networking. And it's really hard to get ahead in life all by yourself. And when you're constantly moving, which I did a lot of throughout my career and throughout my life in general, I've lived in a lot of places and I've started over from scratch. I realized that when you're always on the go and you're moving, I moved for grad school and I moved for different reasons. And one of the things I find, you're always having to start over with your network because you can't really carry your network with you. So you have to start all over. So one of the things I saw was that, well, if networking isn't scary and so intimidating, then I'd probably do it more. And if I do it more, then other women will do it more. So by combining the two, it took something that's like, people don't always go look forward to doing. Like after a long day at work, you're like, okay, I'm tired, I want to go home. I don't really feel like, you know, being uncomfortable and being in this room with people I don't know, standing on my feet in heels. So I was like, okay, well, if it's fun, then people will treat it as like going to, like you said, a dinner party and something that they look forward to and that they sign up for and that they don't really have to be super, you know, a certain way. But at the end of the day, this goal still applies. You're going there to meet people, to connect. We invite women to bring their business cards and dance shoes. So you're still getting the same type of experience, but it's doing it in a way that's not so, you know, scary. And that's what I wanted. I never once feared going to a dance class in my life. And that same feeling of that excitement, knowing that, okay, dance class is Friday, I wanted women to say, okay, that networking event is Saturday and I can't wait and it's on my calendar versus, oh, I have to do this because I need to meet people to get promoted. It's like when you want to do something, you tend to look forward to it and you bring a different attitude when you come to those events. It's obvious when you do something and you're at a space where you don't feel comfortable, it's hard to open up and it's hard to really make those connections that you need to get ahead. So that's really the vision behind merging those two, is taking something that I knew that I always enjoyed and that tends to break people down and make them less like stiff when they're dancing, and then combining with something that I know a lot of women are afraid of, and that's putting themselves out there and networking.
Yes, awesome. I used to go to Zumba classes with my mom every week.
Oh,
And
sweet.
there with women that are like 30 years older than me. But I think when you're all on the dance floor together and you're having fun, it really destroys barriers of all different types because,
Mhm.
I think at the time I was like, 14? And I was hanging out with a bunch of women that were older than me. But I think because we all had our love for dance in common, it made it a really enjoyable experience. So I really love that message that your brand holds. One of the things that you said earlier that I thought was really interesting was you mentioned the traditional job like idea, like you grow up and you become a doctor, or you grow up and you become a lawyer or a teacher. Um, Jobs that are based around stability instead of passion. And I just wanted to ask you, did you struggle with? I think you mentioned this, saying that you did struggle, but if you did struggle with um, stepping out of that traditional job role, then how was that process like for you, and what did you do to become confident in your job that you have today?
Yeah, no, that's a great question because leaving that comfort zone is easier said than done, because when you're getting a stable paycheck every 2 weeks, you have an idea of what you're going to do. You have a general sense of what to expect when you come into work every day. Entrepreneurship is not the same. It's a completely different beast. But I will say that what helped me get over that was to remember that the jobs that I had for all those years, someone had to believe in themselves for me to have those jobs. So I had to think about that. Like, I was fortunate and I've had some really great opportunities, and someone had to believe in themselves for me to have those opportunities. So if I believe in myself and I create my own opportunity, then one day, then someone can look up and say, hey, Netwerk gave me this opportunity. And I was the person that was the one that believed in myself in order to create new opportunities for people in the community. So that's one thing that really helped me, was thinking through all of the experiences I've had and how much sacrifices that the founders and the CEOs of those companies needed to make in order for me to have a stable job. And that got me excited and motivated me to say, well, you know what? I can create stable jobs. And then on top of that, give back. For me, the number one motivation, where I think anyone, when they're thinking about starting something, is asking yourself, like, what's the light at the end of the tunnel? For me, it was having something and a way to give back, to the world. And I think everyone should want to do that in some form or another with their careers. And I saw Netwerk as my ultimate, like, hey, if I can contribute something to society, this can be it. And I couldn't necessarily say that in the jobs that I had before, although they were stable and they were, really meaningful job, and they were probably someone's dream job. At the end of the day, I had to be really honest with myself that giving back and having some form of impact in the world, that in a way that's true and resonates to me, that was priority. And when you think long term like that and you think grander like that, it makes that fear of instability less scary. It's always going to be scary, but if you need like motivation, for me, that's always one. Hey, you know what? This may not necessarily go exactly as planned and vision, but at least I'm doing something that contributes to the world in a positive way.
I think that's perfect. I know personally for me, I have a board of all of the things that I kind of want
Mhm.
for Pinterest, and I keep them just in case I get discouraged or anything. And I think having little
Love it.
like that really help, because I think along the way there's sometimes a waiting period when you're waiting for your business to take off, or
Yes.
dreams or everything just to fall together. And I think the problem with a lot of people struggle with is that they give up too early on their dreams. So
Yes.
I think it's really important that you have little things that keep you motivated, like no matter what the circumstances.
Right. And take your time too. One of the things I noticed so much is people feel like they have to be all in right away. Like I built Network for years in my corporate job before I started focusing on it full time. So it's not like everything needs to happen overnight. You can maintain a job. You just have to get a little bit better with time management while you're waiting for your business to take off. And I actually highly recommend that because it takes time to formulate an idea. A lot of the things that I explained to you that we started to roll out, like the certification, the licensing program, and then Network Society, those didn't happen day one. Those took years to like develop. So having a job while doing that was actually very beneficial to me because it allowed me time to like experiment with my ideas and to allow them to evolve organically because everything's not going to come to you in the very moment that you have that vision of your business. So that's one thing I would say is just be patient with the process. And I also have to remind myself that too, because I can be extremely impatient, but you need to remember that what you're building is like a marathon and not a race. Just like you didn't learn all the skills that you need to do your job in one day, you're not going to learn everything that's going to take to evolve your business in one day. So.
Exactly. And I think the reason why I think we live in such an instant world, and I feel like a lot of us are impatient, is because of social media. And
Yes.
yes, it's really easy to log on and see people doing certain things and get discouraged because you're like, oh, wow, so-and-so's doing this or so-and-so's really great at that. But it's really easy to, I guess, ignore all the hard work that that person may be putting into it or all the long nights that someone might have spent working on their craft. So I think I always tell my friends, don't compare yourself to strangers on social media because just because you see a small picture doesn't mean that you see the full picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very well said.
Thank you. Another question that I had planned for you was for people who might be more introverted, it could be really like it could cause anxiety to start building a network. So what advice would you give to someone who might be on the shyer side of things?
Yeah, that's a really great question because I do have a lot of people in my life who deal with the same thing, being a little bit more on the introverted side. I would say be patient with yourself, but also understand that to build anything is going to require you to be uncomfortable. So the quicker you can start to put yourself in positions that make you a little bit uncomfortable and normalize discomfort, that's really going to help you on your journey. And a perfect example of that is if you're more introverted, you tend to sit in the back of the room, or if you don't like to speak up a lot, practice speaking up in situations in your personal life that you probably would have kept quiet because that tiny step of saying, raising your hand more often and being the first to speak, then that's going to start to groom you little by little to get ready for the bigger things. When you're in meetings with people that can help your career, you can now start to be a little bit more vocal and more visible. But being visible and being out there, it doesn't necessarily need to be something that it's your strength, but if you see it as something that's going to be an asset to what you're building, like your business, then it is definitely something that you want to slowly get yourself more comfortable with. And it's okay to be introverted. I don't think being a business owner requires you to like be this extroverted person like you typically may see. You can still maintain who you are, but understand that just like, and everyone's going to need to evolve and develop new skills in order to get to that next level. That's just going to be a skill that you're going to need to develop, like networking, maybe even taking some classes, taking some one-on-one coaching with someone, taking what do they call that? They call it a Toastmaster, taking Toastmaster classes to get comfortable speaking. But as a founder, as someone who's creating things, your mind should always be thinking about, well, how am I going to continue to develop myself? So that should definitely be on your list of things to develop is being more, putting yourself out there and getting comfortable being a marketer, as they say.
Yeah, I did back in 7th grade, I think, and it really because they would just throw random topics at you and you would have to talk about stuff for like 5 minutes. But I think little tiny things like that definitely do help, And I'm reading this book. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People by
That's good. I've heard of that.
Yes, it's so good. It's so good. And one of the things that he talks about is the power of just a smile or the
Mhm.
power of remembering somebody's name or pronouncing it correctly. And I was wondering if you had something that was like really simple that you like to think about, that you would recommend to someone that's trying to build their network.
Yeah, a lot of things. I really like the smiling and remembering people's names. I think that's really important. Another thing is always think about things from a win-win perspective. Like one of the things when I'm networking, I never like to think of it as, okay, what can I get from this person? The thing is, you always want to go into situations thinking, okay, what can I offer this person that's going to be valuable for them? And then also, what can they do to support me with my goals? If you have that outlook and you approach people in a way that, hey, I can do this for you, you can do this, versus, okay, take, and give me, then it makes people more receptive to you and wanting to work with you, and then also wanting to collaborate because they see the value of what you're doing, what you're trying to accomplish, and they see that there's something in it for them too. So I would say, like, as you're trying to like get out there and connect with people and be more likable and to build a network, always be thinking win-win oriented. We're not going to get far if you're always thinking about what people can do for you alone. Understand that everyone has something that they can offer to people, and offer it. Don't be afraid to offer things that you can to help people in exchange for collaboration or doing things like that.
That's really interesting. I feel like sometimes with networking, I think some people kind of see it as a leech person type of ordeal, and
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes people will try and take advantage of kindness or be able to just try and take advantage of the things that so I think that having the win-win perspective is really valuable because it protects you from being one of those types of people, and it protects you from being around those types of people, if that makes sense. Uh,
Right.
my next question for you is, in the age of social media, it can be really easy to focus on only networking through social media. So how would you say, especially for me, I don't know, I grew up in like only social media times, so I don't know how to talk to people without social media sometimes. How would you recommend, like, what would you recommend to kids my age, and even younger sometimes, on how to network without necessarily using social media or email or traditional?
Yeah. Right. And I don't think there's anything wrong with networking on social media. I do majority of my networking on social media. Yeah, majority of it. Before COVID, though, I love going out to events, and I highly recommend finding networking events. Every community has some form of them, even if they're not called networking events, and they're things like being involved in your church or volunteering to do something or giving back to some cause. These are all volunteer opportunities. And I recommend, once it's safe to do so again, get out. There's nothing compares to like when you meet someone in person and you have that connection. I truly believe no amount of social media really replaces that human one-on-one connection that you make with someone at an event. So going to events, but try not to make it so random. When you're looking for events, try to align your events to your interest and your industry. If you're running a business, like for example, in my case, I have a women's organization. So I tend to try to attend events that women attend or that are aligned to causes of giving back or confidence or leadership. So they're not random, they're really targeted towards my industry. So I say going to events, and then also inviting people to do what we're doing now. Join Zoom calls, connect face to face. That's not necessarily social media. And you can do that through social media. You can message someone and invite them on a call. But that one-on-one, that face-to-face interaction, there's nothing that replaces it. Because if you think about it, there's a lot of us on social media. You really stand out when you make those personal connections with people off the gram or off anywhere else.
That's so smart. Hopefully when COVID's over, we can go out and talk again.
Yeah, I'm patiently waiting.
Me too. I think my last question for you is, which I think we've already talked about, but if someone's like starting a business, has no idea where to start, what would you say would be like the number one step to meeting new people in the time of COVID?
Yeah. The first thing I would recommend is try to do a lot of research, but don't get overwhelmed because you're going to read a lot of things that are probably going to conflict and it's going to be a lot of information. Understand you're never going to learn everything all at once, but the more information you can have about your industry, the more research you can do about what you're doing, and the more you can talk to people in your field. That's one thing I did when I decided, hey, I really want to scale this brand. I don't necessarily want this to be something I do as a hobby. I think it's going well. I think it has a lot of potential. I started reaching out to a lot of people that were successfully building brands in my space. And it was helpful to get their perspective. And they also gave me ideas of things that I never really found when I was Googling and doing research. So I think that's valuable too. I think people sometimes are scared to reach out in their industry and think, oh, well, this person is a competitor. I don't want to speak. Well, listen, I reached out to all my competitors and I spoke with them and I loved all the advice they gave me. And a lot of them were very open to connecting. So don't hesitate doing that, learning from people that are actually in that space. And then another thing is like inhale and exhale and get over those weird, scary feelings you're going to get because that's normal. I know a lot of people will take that as a sign that this isn't right or anything, but just know that it's normal to be scared when you're starting something new. Majority of us are scared at some stage. So just prepare for a lot of seasons of like confusion and I'm not sure or self-doubt, but understand that that's a normal part of the process as well. And then in terms of like building your network, a lot of what I said, get out there, put yourself out there. If you're more introverted, then just little by little, challenge yourself by putting yourselves in those uncomfortable positions so that you can begin to share what you know. And I think one of the last thing is just understand that everyone has gifts and we all have things that are valuable to offer society. So just because what you're doing is something that a lot of people are doing, or some people like to say it's very saturated. Understand most things are going to be very saturated now that we live in an internet age where information is like free and it's online. So don't let that scare you. The key is just to always be coming up with new ideas and new ways to do things and let your idea evolve. Just because you start in one lane doesn't mean you have to stay there. Remember when we were starting, it was just a networking and dance fitness event. And not just because it wasn't that was a bad thing, but the idea wasn't quite evolved yet. So we started there, but then we started introducing other things. And that's normal part of the process. You're not going to get your full vision on day one. So allow your business and your idea time to evolve over time. So that's I would say that's the key things when you're getting started. But the biggest step is just to start. That's usually the hardest. Once you start, then things start to fall in place. I will tell you, so many opportunities that we've gotten, like places that we partnered with, like Vogue and the United Nations, these were not opportunities that would have ever came our way had I not just started and not overanalyzed the idea. Like I would say that's the biggest one, is to get started. I had the vision of Netwerk in January 2018, and then by March 2018, we launched our first event. There was not a lot of thought. There was not a lot of like, oh, well, let me go and do all these things. But I was researching and I was developing the idea ongoing consistently for years. I was always learning. I was always putting myself in situations that are uncomfortable. Even now with this new program, I'm doing things that I've never done before. So you're never going to get out of that learning phase. So just see it as a process and try to enjoy it.
Yes. Oh my God. That was like the best piece of advice. Thank you so much. Those are all the questions that I had for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Just another sunny day.